The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Want the real story behind the sound bites and headlines? Let's find the facts. Remember, it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. You are not paranoid or confused. You just need to know.
Welcome in, everybody. It's time for another edition of Need to Know here on TKR. Kip Keefer with you again this week, and glad to be here. Not very much going on in the world these days. Well, that's being sarcastic. It is a whirlwind. It is a blitzkrieg. It is a tsunami, whatever kind of descriptive term you want to use. It just keeps coming up, and it just keeps getting crazier, and it just keeps getting more interesting in terms of commentating on all the goings on that we are witnessing. With that being said, let me kick off today's program by telling you that if you're a new listener to Need to Know, I always like to remind everybody that I have no intention of telling you how to think. I don't have any intention of telling you what to think. I do not present information on this show to try and convince you of a counter opinion or to try to influence you to think a certain way. I am here because I like to present as I see them, the facts and the facts alone, common sense, which is something that has been absent in our society throughout my adulthood, and it just keeps to seem to dwindle more and more. I don't like groupthink. I don't like that we have a biased media that tries to indoctrinate your thinking and try to create things that don't exist. I'd like to start off the show today by telling you that a lot of the philosophy I have, I think, emanates from experiences in my younger life where I was kind of a typical kid in the late 70s and beyond, where I was just out hustling for a buck or two so I could live my interesting lifestyle. I loved going to ball games, grew up in Atlanta, loved going to Braves games. When the Atlanta Flames came to Atlanta, that became the kind of core in my high school years of all of our social activities. We were at just about every game, and we didn't have any money. It wasn't a situation where I could go and hey, mom, I need 100 to go to the ball game. That really wasn't available at that time because my parents had divorced in the 70s when it wasn't even fashionable to do so. Created a lot of financial hardships, and I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I was raised in squalor in some kind of non-air conditioned shack. I lived in a beautiful home in suburban Atlanta that my parents bought in the late 60s, and it was an iconic upbringing because we lived in a neighborhood in a city that was just on the boom scale at that point. Atlanta was just a fantastic melting pot. Virtually our entire neighborhood, Dunwoody North, which was about 20 minutes away from downtown Atlanta. It was almost all transplants from all over the country. It was an iconic place to grow up. It was awesome. So many people from so many different parts of the country. And my best friends to this day, my very best friends are the same guys that I went to high school with, starting in our high school back in those prehistoric days, ridiculously, was from 8th to 12th grade. So as a 12-year-old, I spent my first day at Peachtree High School in Atlanta in the 8th grade, but my lifelong friend who, like Tony Kurre, is from the Cincinnati metro area. He grew up in Fort Thomas, Kentucky before moving to Atlanta. Jim Hevern, met him on the second day of school way back then in 8th grade. He's been my best friend ever since, not to mention my other great friends, Mark Random, Joe Lippum, Steve Hardy. These are guys that go all the way back to those high school years in that iconic situation in North Atlanta. But I raised that point because we were always involved in whatever we could do to make money. And a predominant thing in those early years, as I played Little League Baseball throughout that time, of course, and pursued all the other sports in high school. But in those days, especially in those teenage years, did a lot of umpiring. Called a lot of games at Little League fields, working for the associations, the leagues that were putting on those games. I think we were making some kind of huge figure, like $8 a game. And that wasn't too good, but it was consistent with kind of minimum wage, because at that time, I think minimum wage when I was a junior in high school was something like $3.85 an hour. So, a Little League ball game with a 90-minute time limit, you got $8, righteous bucks. So that was a little bit better than even minimum wage. Anyway, that kind of morphed into getting involved in basketball officiating when I went to Memphis State University as a freshman. My first year there, once again, I found myself in a position where, I needed to make some extra money. My dad was paying my tuition. He had been transferred to Memphis and went up there, knew nobody, was really kind of a bad situation socially, but I got a car out of the deal. So I made that step. But that first year, I actually signed on with a basketball officials kind of provider. I don't remember exactly the circumstances. It may have been the county. It could have been some kind of independent deal that staffed certain games. But I think I developed a lot of the characteristics that I bring you today of making the call, making the right call, and being very steadfast in my position that it was the right call. You don't get anywhere as an official if you're wishy-washy, if you waver. You watch the play, you watch the action, you make a determination. Is it a ball? Is it a strike? Is it a foul? Is it a travel? Is it a double dribble? Whatever it is, if you make the call, you stand by the call, because in your mind, you saw it, you interpreted it, and you're making the right call. That's the philosophy I have on this program. I make a call, I'm sure about the call, and I stand by it. And that's just the way I operate. And again, that's not to influence anybody. It's just to give you the absolute on-the-spot interpretation of the things that I'm witnessing as I go forth. And I'll tell you a quick side story in Memphis that year. I guess right away, my abilities. I had done a lot of refereeing at the local rec center, even in my high school years, mostly of younger kids' games, of course, because you wanted some age disparity there, I guess. But a lot of my Saturdays in my high school years were spent at the Doraville Rec Center in Metro Atlanta, where they had a whole slate of games all afternoon of all different age groups, and just ran up and down the court and with my whistle and my striped shirt and did a lot of that. So when I got to Memphis, I was already pretty seasoned official. And I guess the word got out pretty quick that I could get some better assignments. So they started assigning me a lot of middle school games in the Memphis metro area. And one Saturday I was asked to go downtown. I live way out in Germantown, which is a suburb of Memphis, and was asked to go downtown and officiate a game with a couple of the traditional downtown kind of inner city powerhouses. I got down there. Long and short of the story, I don't want to take up the whole broadcast with this, but it was a very important day. You have these days that you look back on your life and you realize that places where you kind of took steps forward. And this was one, because when I got there, it was a half hour before game time, kept waiting, 10 minutes before game time. My other official never showed up. So then you're kind of in a quandary because, I'd called games by myself, of course, at the rec center, but this is a lot different. This is middle school. I was 19 years old. These kids were 14 or 15. A lot of them really looked like grown men. These guys could really run, really jump. This was high level. And with a partner, it'd been no problem. But shortly before the game, the coach of the visiting team came over and said, "Hey, one of my assistants has some officiating experience. Do you want him to call the game with you?" And I said, "Well, I don't know if that's really a good idea." So I asked the home team coach, and he said, "Well, I don't want to be an ass, but I think I'd have kind of a problem with that." So anyway, the long and short of the story was I wound up being the sole official in that game. And I told both coaches before, I'm gonna bust my ass here. I am gonna run up and down the court. I'm gonna do the best job I can do. I can promise you that I will make the majority of the correct calls. If I do miss something or I can't be in the right position, I would appreciate not having a lot of raucous reaction, because what I'm trying to do here is really difficult. So I went end to end, back and forth the entire game. I did live up to my word. I busted my ass. I made a lot of great calls, I think, and probably did as good a job as any person in that position, especially a 19-year-old. Not a lot of generational separation in that situation, because again, some of these guys were probably more mature than I was at that point. And I'm saying middle school, 14 or 15. Some of these guys might have been 16. But anyway, long and short of the story was the game had a few conflicts. It was a hot rivalry. The crowd, it wasn't a big gym, but it was packed and it was rocking and rolling. And I got into it and accepted that challenge. And later on, after the fact, I had both coaches come up and tell me I did an exceptional job. And about a week later, I got a mystery envelope in the mail and opened it up. And it was from whatever the and again, I don't know who I was actually working for at the time, but they sent me an extra $20 check and said, "We've gotten so many good reviews of your work in a bad circumstance. Take this as a token of our appreciation." So, I mean, it was really kind of one of those experiences that you realize that if you're up for the task and you believe in yourself and what you're doing, and you don't waver and you don't be wishy-washy in your convictions, it can serve you well. And I think in my broadcast career, it's always been something that it's in the back of my mind. I'm going to make the call. I'm going to be sure about my call, and I'm going to stand by it no matter what. And that is what I try to do here on these programs. So today, with that theme is being developed, and once again, it probably was 10 minutes more developed than I intended, but that's just the way I roll here. And if you've listened to me, I'm sure you've come to understand that. But today, I preface the show with that because today I'm making the call. I'm not wearing a striped shirt. I probably should have, because I forget we're on podcast now. And if I wore my referee shirt today, it probably would have been a lot more appropriate, because I still have one every once in a while. A couple of years ago, I was still getting assignments before my vision really kind of ended my officiating career. But the bottom line is that today I'm going to make some calls, and these calls are going to be, and I'm only going to use the word once, because I know you can say just about anything on this forum, and I appreciate that. But in respect to Tony Kurre and his platform here on the Tony Kurre Radio Network, I'm only going to say it once. I'll use the letters the rest of the time. But today I'm going to call bullshit on some things that I've been seeing and hearing and having to listen to and put up with. And so that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to start with the ultimate BS, which is going to be the descriptive term from here on in, the ultimate descriptive term that the media is in a full-blown campaign now since the announcement earlier last week that Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States, is going to be the heir apparent to the Democrat ticket. will be formally nominated at the convention in Chicago coming up in August. And with that information in place, you know what you're getting with Kamala Harris. I've been talking about her since she became a senator in 2016. I know every aspect of her politics and her attitude. And now, all of a sudden, you're starting to see actual things she said disappear from certain places. You're starting to see revisions online. The Wikipedia page that described her has been updated and changed, taking away a lot of the inflammatory information about her. And when I say inflammatory information, she's just like me. She can make a call, she can have an opinion, and she can be unwavering, and that's great. But just because now she's becoming the candidate, you can't whitewash all of that information. You can't make it disappear. It's in the public record. And more importantly, people that pay attention like me, I already know who this woman is. I already know what she stands for. And all the revision in the world they want to try to do, and all of the posturing that they coach her up to try and portray, it's BS. I'm calling it. I'm making the call. I wish I had a whistle. I should have brought some props for this. Not very well thought out, but I am calling BS on the Kamala Harris changeover that it starts with, and the press conference is fresh in my mind, when Joe Biden early on passed the hot potato to his vice president, which is what a president does. The vice president, one of their roles is to step in places that are not politically expedient for the president or are things that a president regards as beneath their pay scale. And immediately upon her becoming vice president, Joe Biden proclaimed her in charge of the southern border, in charge of securing the southern border, in charge of working closely with the Department of Homeland Security and get that border secure. Now, this is 2021, early on in the administration. And she gave a speech and said, Mr. President, I appreciate the confidence you're showing in me, blah, blah, blah. Basically, Kamala Harris realized right away, this is a crappy assignment. I don't want any part of it. And also, I'm going to just kind of mail this in because the dirty little secret, folks, and I've told you all a million times in the year and a half I've been doing this show, it comes down to this was not ineptitude at the border. This was not bad systems, bad planning. This was intentional. This importation of people from all over the world. We basically sent engraved invitations to people to come to America. We will take care of you. We will house you. We will feed you. We will educate your children. We will give you opportunities for income. You can be on public assistance. I mean, who would not leave the crappy places they lived and take advantage of that? And they've come in droves, and they've continued to come. And you know, you hear the term now, 10 million illegals in the country. Some people say 11, but the bottom line is we have no idea because these are people that have had encounters with border agents and typically have just been given a slip of paper, giving a court date deep in the future, and then off you go. You know, it has not been an immigration process. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. When you hear even conservatives say, well, you know, this illegal immigration, it's illegal, but it's not immigration, people. Immigration is a legal process. You come in, you apply for entry into the country. It's either granted or not granted. Everybody doesn't get the go ahead. And also, you don't have this influx of people coming from all over the world, really the worst elements of societies from all these countries that come to our country with criminal records. They wouldn't get into the country if there was a legal immigration process taking place. And there is no such thing as immigration without the word legal, because if it's not done that way, it's illegal and it's not immigration. It's migration. It's invasion. It is not immigration. So don't let them sell you the rotten banana that Kamala Harris, because now they're saying, well, she was never officially put in charge of the border. The hell she wasn't. There was a press conference and she accepted that responsibility and then shirked it, and has only been in the area of the border one time a couple of months after that proclamation, and it was in downtown El Paso. The border is more down, of course, away from there. So she never actually went to any of the hot spots in Texas or Arizona or California and assessed the actual situation. It's all phony. It's all false. This is what they wanted. So she was given that responsibility because she is so inept and so indifferent to doing anything except for climbing the ladder of recognition, that she was the perfect person to put in charge. Because you talk about a paper tiger in charge of anything, Kamala Harris was an absolute perfect fit. So that's the big lie they're trying to perpetrate now, that she was never officially put in charge of the border, because they know that if that's hung on her, as it has to be, because as the person designated by the president to be in charge, she's responsible for all of these crimes, all of this economic complete strife in our big cities, all of the situation, this influx of people pouring in this country. She did nothing to curtail it, because that was not the administration's intent at all. These people have been financed to come here by George Soros organizations, all of these European entities, this unholy alliance I've been telling you about, all these people that have the same aim, and that aim is to implode this country from within, since we are not vulnerable to attacks from the outside world. The way to tear this country down and all of its founding principles and its constitution was to overrun the country with this unbelievable, unprecedented in the world. This is the largest invasion in the history of the world. The absolute largest invasion. Some experts say there could be as many as 17 to 20 million illegal people in this country right now. And it's offensive, of course. I'm being offensive to call them illegal people. They're not people. They're not illegal as people, but their presence here is illegal if they didn't go through the immigration process. And to be handed a court date for 2027 to plead your case is not a legal process. It was designed, again, to facilitate people just being able to stroll in the country. And then if that's not enough, we put them on a bus, we put them on a plane, we send them anywhere they want to go. How many times has anybody offered you a plane ticket if you say, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable here in my hometown of Birmingham. I don't think I'm getting a fair shake here. I need a plane ticket to Seattle or Phoenix. I need to go and look for a better life for myself. Oh, well, American citizen, well, we'll fix you up right now. Here's a free airline flight to anywhere you want to go. That's what these people coming from all corners of the world who say, I'm here for sanctuary. I'm here to escape my own country, and I want to go to New York City, or I want to go to Chicago, or I want to go to Denver. And these cities have been overrun because we are facilitating this. It's unbelievable that American citizens are sitting back and watching all of this nonsense. So Kamala's got a whole bunch of baggage. She's against anything that's not run by the federal government. She's already called for the elimination of private insurance. Her rationale is it's not fair that people have to go through the process and could actually be turned down if they don't fit all the requirements. Every person, not American, every person in this country, according to Kamala Harris, deserves free health care, deserves all government services. And all of this is designed for one purpose, and that purpose is to give the federal government complete control over all of the industry, over all of the health care, over all of the education, over all of the appliances you can drive or have, the cars you can drive, where you can go, what you can do, what you should do for a living. These people want to dictate to you how you heat your home. These people want to dictate to you everything that you can do, not everything you want to do, everything that they will allow you to do. That is a Marxist system. That's exactly what, go back and read the original book on Marxism by Karl Marx. That's why it's named Marxism. And what they're trying to implement here is exactly that. And it's not a James Bond plot. It's not a maniacal crazy man at the controls. This is a worldwide movement, because the one thing standing in the way of this kind of global kumbaya supposedly design that these crackpots have is America's strength and freedom, and a strong and free America is standing in the way of them getting any of this done. So really take it with a grain of salt. You're going to see the media try and create this picture that Kamala Harris is just a solid citizen, a model, moderate American, because the Democrats realize they cannot run a supreme radical like Kamala Harris, who's in favor of the government taking over everything, and all of the things on her resume that they're trying to erase, of her being an extreme leftist, once called by an independent publication the most liberal, the most progressive, the most far left senator in the United States. And this is not a country of extremes. This is not a country that is designed to work if you have an absolute extremist in charge of the most important office in the world, the White House. Kamala Harris is a card-carrying, hardcore leftist, progressive, Marxist, and to think that she has any chance to win the presidency if they don't try to recreate her as some kind of moderate, which is just laughable. That's what they ran Joe Biden as last time. And unbelievably, people took it hook, line, and sinker. They elected Joe Biden thinking that he was going to be a guy that was going to unite the country. That's a big laugh. The country's never been more divided now, because Joe Biden was beholden to the people that got him elected, the same people that are trying to pull the strings and topple this country. And Joe Biden is a man of no principles. Joe Biden is a man of no ideology. Joe Biden is a 50-plus year politician who is riding the wave of being able to gravy train, never having a real job, being in Washington, being wrong about most of his policies. And not only that, in total cognitive decline, which he was when he was elected in 2020. Why do you think they kept him out of sight? That's why, because he would be exposed. And for 3.5 years, they have lied to every one of you, me, you, your family, your friends, anybody living nearby. They have cast this ridiculous picture of Joe Biden, that he's vigorous and he's involved and he's so well informed and he outworks everybody and blah, blah, blah. The bottom line is this guy has slept through most of his 3.5 years. He is done from a mental standpoint. He doesn't have the stamina to to do any of the things that a president needs to do, especially be available 24/7. He to prove when he was still running for president a week ago, to prove his stamina, they gave him a pretty busy schedule for about 5 days, where he actually traveled to a couple of different events and did not go back to the Delaware beach house. The horror, because he's done it every weekend since he's been in office, and see how long he lasted. About 5.5 days before he broke down. They claimed he had COVID, but he was exhausted. He couldn't do it anymore. They had to get him back to the beach house in Delaware, where he disappeared for almost 10 days before declaring that he was out of the race after defiantly on a Saturday night. This is a week ago Saturday. He declared defiantly on Saturday night before retiring about 8:30 that and retiring, what I say by that, retiring to go to bed. He declared that he is going to resume his campaign in next week, which was last week. He was going to get back on the trail and get back at it. But by Sunday at 1:00, he sent out, supposedly he sent it out, but clearly he didn't write it. There was a message sent out on X, Elon Musk's site, used to be Twitter, that said, I'm not stepping aside. I will not seek the presidency. No details. We didn't learn until Tuesday last week that he was getting out of the race, supposedly because he had a moment to realize that he needed to pass the torch to a new generation and step aside. This was a guy that 10 hours before had declared he'd be back on the campaign trail the next week. They came to him and said, Joe, you can't win. You're out. Here's all of our really in-depth polling. People saw you in the debate. They know you're not 100%. You have no chance. You've got to get out, and we're going to make you get out, whether you like it or not. Nancy Pelosi reportedly said we can do it the easy way of you stepping aside, or the hard way by putting on political pressure and even imposing the 25th Amendment, which all the cabinet officers have to sign to remove a president, which would have been the ultimate humiliation. They forced Joe Biden out. Anybody who thinks Joe Biden stepped aside willingly, I'm making another call, BS, absolute BS. That is not true. As usual, I have got a whole list of things to call BS on, but I'm already running short on time, so we'll need to sort of kind of wrap this up here. I will tell you, I'll give you the rest of my list, but I can't go into any details. Maybe we can get into it again next week. But I'm calling BS on the last week in Washington. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, made a speech to the joint session of Congress. The new presidential candidate, who is right now still vice president, who presides over the Senate, chose to sit that one out to go to a sorority reunion. What a slap in the face for our longtime ally and people that have been great at our side. Israel, democracy, the one standard bearer in the Middle East, who's steadfastly been a partner with America. And that day in Washington, the most shameful thing, a block from the Capitol building at Union Station, a giant rally, pro-Palestinian rally, tearing down American flags, putting up Palestinian flags. It's not even a country. It's just a group of people. But they were burning the American flag a block from the Capitol. Nobody did anything about it. It's absolutely shameful. It's absolutely disgraceful. And in that situation, yes, there were the anti-Israel sentiments, but there was also death to America. There was also Hamas is coming painted on our monuments. This is a movement that is not really pro-Palestinian. This is organized. This is not organic. This is that same group of people that I've been telling you about, the George Soros foundations, the different radical far left Marxist movement to try and destroy this country. This is an anti-American rally because they're trying to create the impression that there's so much chaos in this country that it's not worth preserving, and change people's perceptions. The entire program of all of these protests and everything else, and yes, they do have some indoctrinated young people, but these are professional antagonists, and they're being paid, and they're being sponsored, and they're being directed on what to do and what havoc to create. This is an anti-American movement, and if you don't realize that, you're really missing the boat. This has nothing to do with Gaza and the Palestinian people. And shamefully, Kamala Harris, in a meeting with Netanyahu the next day, came out. We don't know what was said in the meeting, but she came out and told reporters, I warned the prime minister. Who is she to warn Benjamin Netanyahu, the head of a country, anything? She doesn't warn Benjamin Netanyahu. I warned him that there's too many casualties in Gaza, and this has to stop. There has to be a ceasefire. If Israel doesn't completely eliminate Hamas, they are going to be subject to more and more attacks, and it's their very existence is in play, because nobody's talking about the genocide that these people want to impose upon Israel. Their stated goal is to wipe every Israeli off the face of the earth. This whole from the river to the sea is to basically march the Israeli population into the sea to their demise. This is the stated goal of the Iranians. It's along with death to America, by the way. This is and they're the sponsors of all this. Absolute BS call there. Quickly, the other couple of things, and I'll wrap this up for this week. Let's see. We've got some other, and I never call on notes, but I do have a list of things I want to talk about. I'll wrap it up with this. In the Olympics, another movement that's total BS, and I'm making the call here. Another movement that qualifies is this whole gender equality thing, this gender sympathy thing. The Olympic opening ceremony is marred by a bunch of drag queens, a bunch of transsexual folks doing a skit which really kind of made light of or absolutely a mockery of one of the most sacred occasions in the Christian faith, that, of course, being the Last Supper of Jesus. And for that to be allowed by the International Olympic Committee, by the organizers in France, and they're acting like now, and this is what I'm calling I call BS on the whole gender movement, because again, their stated goal is to bring recognition and even sympathy to people in their position, but really, it's still anti-Western civilization sentiment. It's attacks on organized religions and people's faith. It's just a sham. It's just shameful. And for the IOC and the Paris authority, the French authorities, to allow this to be part of opening ceremonies, they're backtracking like crazy now. We didn't realize what they were going to do. BS. That's the ultimate BS call, because nothing goes on in those ceremonies that isn't examined, scripted, approved, and scrutinized. So don't buy that, folks. BS on anybody claiming that they didn't know that was it was going to be their presentation. They shouldn't have been included anyway. Again, whatever choice a person makes individually in their life and what they want to declare themselves, knock yourself out. That's none of my business. But it becomes my business when children around the world watching the Olympic opening ceremonies see a bunch of men dressed up as nuns and other scantily clad females dancing around and making light of the Last Supper, the most sacred part of the majority of the planet's population, Christians, and overwhelmingly the majority in France, which once was the home to the Catholic Church for many, many years before they ended up in Italy. So as usual, I've run long on time. Thank you for everybody tuning in. Wanted to make a few BS calls. I had some more, but we've run out of time here. So I will talk to you again next week. Maybe we'll pick this up. But again, I have made the call. It's the right call. I stand by the call. And now you need to analyze all the information that you receive and make a call on your own. Don't be afraid to blow that whistle when it's appropriate, and stand by your call every step of the way. I'm Kip Keefer. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Need to Know.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.